dear listeners, welcome to our podcast for English learning. We are here to help you improve your English skills while learning about interesting topics. My name is Emma.
And I am John. Today, we will talk about life in the past for people in the United States. Let's begin.
In the past, life in the US was very different. People didn't have the technology we have today. There were no smartphones, computers, or the internet. They relied on letters to communicate, and it could take days or weeks to send or receive messages.
Yes, that's true. Transportation was also different. People traveled by horses or on foot. If they wanted to visit another town, it could take hours or even days. Cars and airplanes didn't exist yet, so travel was slow and often difficult.
Most people lived in small towns or on farms. They grew their own food and raised animals. Farming was a big part of life, and people worked hard every day. There were no big grocery stores like we have today, so families had to be very self-sufficient.
That's right, and life at home was simple too. There were no televisions or radios in the early days. Families spent their evenings reading books, telling stories, or playing simple games. The pace of life was much slower, and people had more face-to-face time with each other.
Education was different too. Many children didn't go to school for long, especially if they lived in rural areas. They had to help their families on the farm. Schools were often one-room buildings, with just one teacher teaching all grades together.
Yes, and the schools didn't have all the modern tools we use now. There were no computers or projectors. Students used chalkboards and books, and they learned basic subjects like reading, writing, and math. School was important, but it wasn't always available to everyone.
Another big difference was healthcare. Doctors and hospitals weren't as advanced as they are today. People relied on home remedies and natural treatments for many health problems. If someone got very sick, it was much harder to get the right treatment.
That's so true. Life expectancy was shorter too, because there were many diseases that doctors didn't know how to cure. Vaccines and modern medicines weren't common yet. Many people worked hard just to stay healthy and take care of their families.
Social life was simpler too. People gathered in their communities for events like church meetings, fairs, or picnics. There weren't many entertainment options, so people had to make their own fun. They enjoyed simple pleasures like music and dancing.
Yes, and the idea of family was very important. Families often lived close together, and grandparents, parents, and children all helped each other. Neighbors also supported each other, and the community was like a big family. People knew everyone in their town.
For work, many men had jobs that involved physical labor. They worked in factories, on farms, or as builders. Women mostly stayed at home, taking care of the house and children. It was common for women to cook, clean, and sew clothes for the family.
That's right. The roles of men and women were very different in the past. Today, both men and women can work outside the home and share responsibilities, but back then, the roles were more traditional. People had to work together to make their lives run smoothly.
Entertainment was also very different. Instead of watching TV or playing video games, people read books, played music, or made crafts. Going to the theater or a concert was a special event. They found joy in the little things and spent more time outdoors.
During holidays, people celebrated with their families and communities. For example, Thanksgiving was a big holiday where families gathered to share food and give thanks. Christmas and the 4th of July were also important times for people to come together.
Yes, holidays were a time to take a break from work and enjoy being with loved ones. People made their own decorations, cooked big meals, and enjoyed simple traditions. It was a time to be thankful for what they had, even if they didn't have much.
Even though life was hard in many ways, people found happiness in their communities and families. They appreciated the little things in life and worked hard to make their world a better place. In many ways, life was simpler and less stressful than it is today.
I agree. People didn't have the same pressures we have today. They didn't worry about emails or deadlines. Instead, they focused on their daily tasks, and when the work was done, they spent time with their loved ones. It was a different kind of life.
Of course, there were challenges too. Life wasn't always easy, especially for people who didn't have much money. Many families struggled to make ends meet, and there were times when food and supplies were hard to find. People had to be resourceful.
Yes, but people supported each other through tough times. Neighbors often shared what they had, and communities came together in difficult times. It was common for people to help each other with building houses, farming, or caring for the sick. In the past, many homes didn't have electricity. People used candles or all lamps for light. Cooking was done on wood-burning stoves, which took a lot of time and effort to heat up. Washing clothes was also difficult, as everything was done by hand without machines.
Yes, electricity changed life a lot when it became common. Before that, people had to live by the natural rhythms of day and night. When the sun went down, there wasn't much light, so they often went to bed early and woke up with the sunrise to start their day.
Shopping was very different too. People didn't have big malls or online stores. They bought goods from local markets or small shops. Sometimes traveling salespeople would come to towns with special items. Many things were made at home instead of bought.
That's true. Clothes were often handmade by mothers or grandmothers, and many people made their own furniture or tools. There wasn't a lot of mass production, so people learned how to fix and build things on their own. Skills like sewing and woodworking were essential.
Communication was slow, but newspapers played an important role in keeping people informed. Families would sit together to read the newspaper and learn about the news of the day. Important events often traveled slowly from one town to another.
Yes, it's hard to imagine a time without instant news. People would wait days or even weeks to hear about major events. Today, we can find out what's happening around the world in seconds, but back then, patience was part of life, and waiting was normal.
Another difference was food. People grew their own vegetables and raised animals. There were no fast food restaurants or supermarkets like we have today. If they wanted to eat something, they had to cook it from scratch, which took time and effort.
Yes, meals were much simpler, but healthier in some ways. Fresh vegetables, bread, and meats were common. People didn't eat as much processed food as we do today, and they cooked using traditional methods that have been passed down through generations.
Holidays were especially important because they gave people a break from their hard work. During Christmas, families exchanged small handmade gifts, and during Thanksgiving, they shared meals together. It was a special time to relax and be with loved ones.
Exactly. While life was hard, people found joy in these special moments. They didn't need expensive gifts or fancy decorations, just spending time together was enough. It's something we can learn from today, appreciating the simple moments in life.
Despite the challenges, there was a strong sense of community. People worked together to solve problems, whether it was building a barn or taking care of a sick neighbor. Communities were close-knit, and people trusted each other more than we see today.
Yes, the sense of community was very strong. People helped each other because they knew that everyone faced the same difficulties. Whether it was during times of joy or hardship, people in the past often leaned on their neighbors for support.
Work wasn't just about earning money. It was a way of life. Many jobs were passed down through families. If your parents were farmers, you were likely to become a farmer too. There weren't as many career options, but people were proud of the work they did.
That's true. Work was very physical, and many people didn't have a choice but to follow in their family's footsteps. But even though life was tough, many people found pride in their work, and they valued the results of their hard labor, whether on farms or in factories. In conclusion, life in the past may have been simpler, but it was also filled with hard work and challenges. People didn't have the technology or comforts we enjoy today, but they made the most of what they had. Their lives were rich with family, community, and tradition. Yes, even though life was more difficult in many ways, people found happiness in small things. Their communities were close, and they worked hard to survive. We can learn a lot from their resilience and how they valued relationships over material things.
That's all for today's podcast. We hope you enjoyed learning about life in the past in the U.S. Remember, you can improve your English by listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Yes, practicing every day will help you get better. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more English lessons. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.